So before we get into the breakdown, I'm just going to cover what a Zerg is. You may know it by some other names, so just leave that in the comments down below and help the next person out. But essentially, it's a large group of players that roams around the map, and it's not really a leader or any communication. It's not like a sort of squad, it's just the general clump of the team that just goes around the map. They sort of just follow whoever's in front. They more or less just follow and go from flag to flag. You know, the enemies also have the same problem. They sort of roll around the flag, you know, don't really look at the map and just follow whoever's in front and just pretty much just run to the sound of gunshots. You know, you more than likely come across them, and when you do, they use their numbers to more or less overwhelm you. You know, it's hard to take on like 10-15 guys at once. Even if you're in cover, you end up just getting shot at by rocket launchers, grenades, you know. It's just not a bad time. You might be able to take out a few of them, but it just turns into a proper mess. So why don't you want to be a part of the Zerg? You get shot from multiple angles. You're subject to explosive spam. You know, some guy on the enemy team gets on the mortar. You know, because like if there's like a few like guys clumped together, you know, 6-7 guys, start firing mortars into them. You've probably seen it before. The heavy bomber flies over, or the planes do, because there's like a group of 6 guys just all together. Instantly get like a 6-man feed going. So that's why you don't want to be a part of it. And it's just harder to get kills and be useful as well. You know, if there's like 10 guys shooting at one enemy, might get an assist, counts as kill. You might even get the kill if you're lucky, but more than likely you're going to get a couple of points for getting a hit, and that's it. You know, and it's just hard to be useful. You know, yeah, you might be capping objectives, but the enemy team's back capping you. You know, so that's why you don't want to be part of it. And what should you do? You know, if you can't be a part of the Zerg, you know, how should you go about playing the game that you're in? So you want to play around it. You know, you want to try and pick off enemies trying to flank the Zerg. You know, so you don't want to be like sort of on the edge of it, but you know, we'll get into it in a bit. But you want to kind of be off to the side of Zerg. You know, being able to take on those groups of enemies that are trying to flank. So 1, 2, 3 guys. You know, ones that you can sort of 1vx type scenarios. And you want to go to parts of the maps that have very little to no teammates. So if you look on the map, you know, if you look for like the blue dots or green dots if you're in a squad, and if you see a sort of an area of the map that's got like sort of sparsely populated by them, you want to kind of move to that direction, because more or less there's going to be enemies coming that way to flank your team. So now that that's been explained, let's look at some examples. Right, okay, I'm going to give you a few seconds now just to guess what's wrong with this picture. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. If you guess the big clump of my teammates in the top part of the map, then you are correct. If you didn't, then this video is going to help sort of show you what to do when a situation like this occurs, and how not to get involved, and why you shouldn't be involved in that big clump of mess that's going on up in that top part of the map. So example 1 of a Zerg happening is this big ass red circle. No, it's not a clickbait video, but it is highlighting, you know, what's happening and why this clump of mass is sort of a Zerg in full swing, really. So, you know, looking at this, you might be a bit confused, wondering like why shouldn't I be there? You know, why these green lines and everything. So we're going to get into that now. Basically, this red circle here is the death zone for the team I was on. Again, every time they'd get out of cover, they would get shot. People would just mortar in. There's literally if you play this map, you know, there's no cover. It's just like sort of an open rolling field. You know, there's a few craters and a trench to hide in, but people getting mortared. Like crossbow nades were coming in, just nades in general, rocket launchers, you name it. It was just a mess going on in there, and people might be getting 1 or 2 kills then dying, and you can see it's not really being productive, as all these green lines highlight routes that the enemy has open to them. You know, you might be like, oh, there's 2 guys on A, but what, you know, those 2 guys, that was 3. I mean, one's just died. So, you know, once if like 6 or 7 enemies decide to come down there, kill those 2 guys, you know, capture A, or, you know, flank behind, shoot our guys in the back. Next thing you know, most of the teams got a 30-second wait, you know, after maybe hanging around to be revived, then going to this deploy screen, then coming back in. I mean, in that time, the enemy could have rotated round, captured A, captured B. Next thing you know, we're getting spawn trapped, and it's just not a good time. So, you know, by being in this red circle, you're just not being productive. If you want to be actually useful to your team, what you could do in this instance, you know, is try and sneak round on one of these green lines and sort of capture one of the objectives behind, whether it be E, potentially C. You know, you want to kind of get further away, just so that way then the enemy has, it takes the enemy longer to come back to the objective that's kind of being backcapped for them. And it just gives yourself and your team an opportunity then to sort of escape what's going on here. So that's what you can do kind of as a solo player or sort of 1 to 2 guys, you know. You just don't want to get caught up in there because it is just a bad time and it's just not productive. You know, you won't really learn much in there because you'll just be constantly getting shot at, spammed, killed. You know, and like I mentioned earlier, if you're kind of just getting really pinned down, just try and hold the flanks of the Zerg, like come away and sort of hold one of these green lines, just so that way then like enemies can't come behind and just wipe out the whole team really. So here's just another quick example of the Zerg in motion. So as you can see here, you know, I was the only one defending the sort of one of the lanes between D and E. These lanes aren't correct, the map's indoors, so I just sort of guessed them, but I was the only one defending between D and E. We've got one guy sort of coming out of our spawn, coming over, but really, you know, that whole part of the map's now open to the enemies to be able to sort of rush in and take E. We've got a few guys falling back, which is good, but what could potentially happen here then is the enemy capture E and then follow these sort of yellow lines behind and start shooting at guys that are on B. So it's just another thing to sort of look for on the map. If you see like a big sort of clump of your teammates, you know, sort of look on the map where's areas that are quite open, you know, or where are areas that are sparse or have very little of my teammates in, because more than likely the enemies that are also thinking the same thing will be flanking around those parts of the maps, and that's where you want to be. You don't want to be in that clump of enemies just getting shot at, grenaded, constantly just getting killed. You want to be sort of away from that and just sort of catching enemies that are sort of lagging behind or trying to flank themselves and sort of stopping them. You know, let those guys do their own thing and constantly get killed. You want to be sort of on the outside, sort of taking these like groups of sort of 2, 3, 1 enemies on and just stopping them from being able to flank your team. But no, if you found this video useful or got any more tips for sort of avoiding the Zerg, you know, make sure to leave it down in the comments down below and just help the next person. This is what this channel is about, helping people get better on the battlefield and just make the game just a great and better experience really. But no, if you found this video useful, make sure to drop it a like. If you're new to this channel, subscribe. We're all trying here to get to 500 subscribers, so it really help us out. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one.